The goal, getting other countries on board in order to prevent offshoring. This is a tax rate for corporations. Let's listen.
Competitiveness is about more than how U.S. headquartered companies fare against other companies in global merger and acquisition bids. It's about making sure that governments have stable tax systems that raise sufficient revenue to invest in essential public goods and respond to crises.
So this, as President Biden's administration looks to raise corporate taxes back to roughly what they were before President Trump lowered them, saying the move won't harm the economy. Joining us now to discuss this is American Enterprise Institute's James Pethokoukis and PIMCO's head of public policy, Libby Cantrell. Libby, I thought that the corporate tax rate was 35% before the lowering in the Trump tax reform of 2017-18, not the number to which President Biden wants to take it back. He wants to go back to 28%. Am I right remembering that?
Yeah, that's right. That's the statutory rate, the legal rate. I think effectively many corporations were paying a lower rate than that. But yes, Tyler, that's exactly right. That was the rate on the books, and President Biden is now advocating to take that rate from the statutory 21% to 28%.
So splitting the difference basically between what it was and what it is today. And as you point out, very few companies pay that top marginal rate at all. Many don't. So let me ask you, Jimmy, what incentive would there be for a country like Ireland or a tax haven like the Bahamas or Bermuda or any of a lot of other places? What incentive would there be for them to agree to a uniform corporate minimum tax when they have it pretty good if their tax rates are lower than ours and attract American businesses?
Very little reason. They'd be giving up a potential competitive advantage. You have these small, open economies that have really relied on a very competitive tax rate to attract business. I think this is going to be an extremely difficult thing for the Biden administration to do. And I don't really quite get, I sort of understand why they want to do it. They want to kind of pay for some of this stuff. They don't want to be forced to have a super low tax rate. They want to pay for all this spending. But if Secretary Yellen really wants us to have a very stable tax code for the long term, then they really need to be talking about other kinds of taxes, whether that's a value-added tax, consumption tax, a carbon tax, which would take nicely in some of their environmental goals. If that's the goal, then we need to be talking about something other than just raising corporate income taxes.
Right as we're getting out of the pandemic, Libby, companies are regaining their footing. Is this the right time to be raising taxes? And is there a right time?
Well, look, and I think that you're going to hear, obviously, you've heard that skepticism, that pushback from Republicans on Capitol Hill, and you're hearing it from centrist Democrats. That's why we're skeptical that President Biden will see an increase to 28%. If there is an increase, likely something more to 24 or 25% for that very reason, that there is concern just generally about raising taxes, right after, beleaguered growth. With that said, though, politically, this is very resonant among certain pockets of the Democratic Party. So you will also hear, the progressive folks on the Democratic side calling for an even higher tax rate. But I think, practically speaking, when all is said and done, and I think just to be very clear, we're in very early days of these negotiations. We're kind of in the first or second inning, to use a baseball analogy, in terms of these negotiations. So I think it's really too early. We have to sort of reserve judgment about where we'll ultimately land. But practically speaking, I'm very skeptical that you get to that 28% corporate tax rate for those very reasons.
Jim, I can hear you wanting to get in. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I'll agree with much what Libby said, but I will say that the way the world works by next August or September, it may look very different. We're about to have some really very big GDP quarters. So by the time we get to the fall, which is when this stuff may end up happening, assuming it happens, the economy is going to look a lot stronger. And there certainly might be Democrats saying, listen, the economy looks weak. Now it looks like it's booming. We can certainly afford to raise corporate taxes.
And you're going to look presumably at corporations that are making a lot of profit, and that would be a pretty appealing target for people who favor that approach. Libby, when the Trump tax reformed and lowered corporate rates, one of the arguments was that companies would repatriate profit dollars back into the United States, and that those dollars would go back into investments in plant and equipment, investments in personnel and people. What happened? What really happened?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I think we saw that incrementally. You saw, obviously, a strong economy kind of pre-pandemic, partly in the result of sort of animal spirits increasing from that tax reform package. But of course, you also saw a lot of those proceeds going to things like share buybacks and financial engineering. And again, this is one of the reasons why among big parts of the Democratic Party, there is quite a bit of support for exactly what Jim was saying in terms of increasing the corporate tax rate, because you did see corporations not taking those proceeds and benefiting workers. They really were benefiting shareholders, good for the equity market, but not necessarily great for labor, which is obviously an important constituency of the Democratic Party.
Jimmy, what do you think? How does this position President Biden with his former Republican colleagues in the Senate?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
How do you think this bill, this prospect of a higher tax rate, positions President Biden with his former Republican colleagues in the Senate right now?
Republicans are going to be against any corporate tax increase, no matter how the economy is going. Listen, they look at that as maybe the paramount economic achievement of the Trump administration. It meets a long-term conservative goal, which is lowering corporate taxes as much as possible. They're going to go kicking and screaming into going along with this. I just don't think you're going to get any Republican votes to raise the corporate tax rate. I think it all really at the end.
Libby, Jimmy makes an interesting point that really probably what we need is a thorough conversation about what we tax and who we tax, whether it's corporations, whether it is consumption, whether it is carbon. Can that conversation take place in today's polarized political environment?
Yeah, I mean, there have been, as Jimmy knows, there have been lots of those ideas put on the table previously, whether it's a gas tax or vehicles traveled tax, or a carbon tax. Those I don't think are going to get any traction in today's Washington, not just because of the partisanship and polarization, Tyler, that you point to, but also because there's not unanimity among the Democratic Party about kind of where to go on those issues either. And if anything, kind of politically and messaging wise, increasing taxes on wealthy corporations and wealthy people resonate very well. And President Biden has pledged that he's not going to increase taxes on folks making less than $400,000. And all of those ideas, whether it's a gas tax or a carbon tax or what have you, all would likely have impact on that demographic that Biden has pledged to avoid. So I think bottom line here is no, not in today's Washington, and as a result, that's why they're looking for different sources of revenue.
All right, James Pethokoukis.
That pledge makes our tax code less stable, not more.
Go ahead, Jimmy. I'm sorry. Say that again.
I was going to say, that pledge to not raise taxes on people like under 400, that makes long-term our tax code less stable, not more. And if Secretary Yellen wants it more stable, they have to talk about that.
All right. James Pethokoukis, Libby Cantrell, thank you very much.